about what we have going on, our ETF and staking and the digital asset treasuries that are coming out and all that. But for the ones where we have guests like Collector Crypt, we like to let them take the floor here. I'll be asking questions throughout, but I want you to be able to start and intro yourself, say what you have going on, the launch you have going on this week, Metaplex Genesis, all that, and then we can get into some questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Nikki. And I just want to say that Nikki was actually one of the first users of our platform. Gosh, it must have been almost 2.5 years ago, and we helped before we had much card inventory. Nikki was telling us, "I want this card, I want this card," and we were looking at all the different marketplaces to try to source them from him, and we did pretty well, I think. And so it's just great to come full circle and be able to participate in the space. Thank you, Nikki.
Yeah, of course. And basically, it's funny, like Pokemon cards have outperformed NFTs by a wide margin, and have outperformed the market in some ways. Not financial advice, but every card that I've essentially purchased from you guys or traded in, like they were all wins, like big wins, which is hysterical because it's like you could view it as like irresponsible behavior, but everything is essentially 2 or even 3x because it's just a market that constantly has demand.
Yeah, it's hilarious. I used to make the joke. I can't anymore because it's no longer true. But I used to make the joke that had we just taken our pre-seed money from VCs and just bought cards with it, we would have done way much better. But I think that's not true anymore. We've been able to get some massive growth over the past 9 months or so. But I'll jump into what we are and what we do. So I'm Twum. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Collector Crypt. I've been a collector since the early 90s. I was a big Magic the Gathering player right when it came out. I was semi-professional. I wrote for Scry magazine, which was probably the top, industry magazine. You'd go in there, look at articles, you'd look at price guides. Like all the stores would have a Scry magazine on the table, and they'd say, well, yeah, we buy cards for 30% less than Scry price, or we sell cards at 5% less than Scry price, right? So it's kind of like that kind of thing. And really cool to be a part of that early era of Magic the Gathering. And then, of course, as we all do, I grew up, went to college, put the cards away for a little bit, and then after college, I started getting into it again. I started trading cards on eBay, started looking at my collection, trying to figure out what things were worth, and basically did it as like a hobby for 20 years. And started getting into crypto in 2013, mining Bitcoin. Got into Ethereum in 2016, 2017, mining Ethereum. Got interested in NFTs. I remember where I was standing in Costco when I heard that CryptoKitties had broken Ethereum, and I said, that seems kind of weird. And so then I looked into that, and people were talking about using NFTs to represent, NFTs weren't created to be PFPs, right? NFTs were created to be like digital deeds for real estate and, contracts, for law. Like you could send somebody an NFT to sign, and that would be the same as like using DocuSign or something. Those were the original implementations of NFTs. And so I thought right then, hey, that'd be pretty cool to put trading cards on chain, right? Because it kind of looked like CryptoKitties a little bit, looked like CryptoPunks. But the infrastructure wasn't there. I mean, I was still trading stuff in Ethereum using command line. And there's no way you're going to get somebody, in their mid 30s who trades sports cards to go into a command line to trade something. So it needed a little bit more time to mature or cook. I guess I could use cooking references here on the show. And in 21, DeFi summer happened, then the NFT boom, a bunch of infrastructure was built, OpenSea, Metaplex, all these guys came in and started really innovating in the space. And, then all of a sudden everything was there that we needed to actually build this platform. And so we created the company in October 21, and here we are almost October 25. And it's been a interesting 4 years. We're very excited to have the opportunity to go from being just a few dummies trying to build a platform that nobody wanted to like kind of being on a pretty good arc to take over a lot of the narrative of what the value of blockchain and crypto can be to non-crypto audiences, right? And just a quick snapshot on where we're at. We launched our marketplace in partnership with Magic Eden a couple years ago. We launched our Sniper and Gotcha Machine products late last year. Since we launched those, this year we're over $70 million in total kind of pack rip revenue, and we've probably generated at this point around $4 to $4.5 million in actual net operating profits, which happens to be about 5 times the amount of venture capital we've raised. We only raised about $800,000 like 3 years ago. So to go from just a couple guys with a outsourced engineering team to where we are right now, just been an incredible ride. We've had a lot of pluses and minuses along the way, but I think what we've been able to build since then, and what I think our real kind of like advantages in the space is the community that we've been able to build around us. And we wouldn't be able to do any of this without you guys who are here in our audience, and really appreciate everything you've brought. So I'll take a pause there.
Yeah, no, it's the strides that you guys have made, and like I mean, I remember those early days, years. I mean, two plus years ago, where it was like, why would we want to support this if it's not easy money? Like, it's a real product, so like I'm going to be bearish on it. And you guys just bided your time, waited it out, and metas came and went, and collecting didn't go anywhere. And it stayed and stayed and stayed as other metas came and went. People were like, okay, where can I have fun and get that dopamine hit on products that have inherent value? And then you guys dropped the gotcha at the perfect time. And then all these people who had this itch now to play in a space that now wanted to be a little bit more risk off than they were on before and get like something that's more tangible started going to Collector Crypt, and then you guys finally started getting the recognition you deserve. And you said it was, I mean, how much volume on the gotcha since inception?
About 70 million, a little bit over 70 million, over 1 million packs that have been ripped on the gotcha machine.
Yeah, and how many VCs and potential investors did you talk to years before that were just like, nah, not interested because it's not instant token?
Yeah, pretty much everybody in the Web3 space, and I think we've kind of seen that with some
For
of
you.
the competitive platforms out there. Courtyard was an early innovator in the space, and you take a look at their cap table, and there's only one Web3 VC on their entire cap table. It's mainly Web2 VCs that are on there, and that's kind of like you kind of see what Courtyard has done with their product. They've kind of made it only for a Web2 audience with like a crypto backing and rail. I think we see it a little bit differently. I think what we want to do is really embrace crypto and embrace all of the technology that everybody who's come before us has made, and really try to optimize that experience on the crypto side, and then figure out the right way to open the door or knock down the door to Web2, because there's just so much cool stuff that we could do with a crypto infrastructure behind a collectibles trading platform that one has never ever been conceived before. Two is literally impossible to do. Like there's stuff that we have on our roadmap that is just impossible to do in Web2. And then three, I think we're going about this with collectibles. I mean, some of you in here are obviously long-term enjoyers of Pokemon and sports cards and all that kind of stuff, and what you see is every single kind of service provider or every single platform that you engage with is trying to extract, right? eBay extracts 13% on trades, and they kind of leave you hanging if you have fraud sometimes. Like I'm dealing with a $7,000 fraud case on eBay right now, and they're just being a pain about it. Like every single place is like buy when it should be here, let's create a safe environment. Let's create a cool place where you could go and hang and chill and talk about cards and talk about doing stuff and trade over the counter, and just really taking it back to like the 90s experience, where you don't have somebody like looking over your shoulder trying to figure out, well, hey, how am I gonna capture 10% on that? And so what we've built with Collector Crypt is really community first. Our gotcha machine, we're the only ones out there that do a 10% positive expected value, meaning that if you put $50 on our normal machine for a spin or for a pack, you're gonna on average get a $55 worth of cards out, and that's based on market price, right? So essentially, because we're able to buy these cards through our buyer network at a 10% discount to market price, why not just put that on the machine at a 10% discount, right? And we know that people don't want to go and get a stack of $30 cards. Some people do. I mean, we've shipped out thousands of cards to people who want a stack of $30 cards, which is absolutely fine. But most people don't. So we make our profits based on people selling back the common cards, and we make about 4 to 5% per pack that's sold back, right? But the packs that are kept, we lose 10% on from a market price perspective. So if you average that all out, if you want to go and play the gotcha machine, if you sell back all the common cards and you keep all the uncommon and higher, it's actually like a 2 to 3% positive expected value. So for a $50 pack, you're getting like $51 in value if you just sell back all the common cards. So, our competitors, I think about it as, here's how you create a gambling machine, right? Here's how you extract people from a slot machine type of mechanic. We think of it as a gamified shopping machine where you could go in and get some of the dopamine from, opening packs and having fun. But hopefully at the end of the day, you walk away with a bunch of cards that you've kind of paid fair market value for, right? And sometimes you get some big hits, like, the most valuable card I think right now is $3,800 in our $50 gotcha. So that's nearly an 80x from the upfront value. And people hit these all day long, right? You go to our Discord, we have a gotcha wins channel in there. You see, 50 to 100 major epic hits pulled every single day. And so this is kind of the experience that we want people to collect cards. We've shipped out right now over 10,000 cards to users in our community. We are on the verge of unleashing some really cool partnerships. So we're using our, and maybe I'll save this for when I talk about the token, but we're trying to build a platform to essentially, make it easy to engage with physical collectibles on chain. And so you guys are going to see over the next few years, like, we're just going to keep on dropping a bit of utility and a bit of utility here and there that just slowly build out everything that you would ever want to do with collectibles on chain. And so, I'll take a breather there. Just a very exciting time to be.
Yeah, well, the next part of this that I'll want to get into, and hopefully I'll give you a layup here, is going to be why you're choosing to launch this with Metaplex as part of the Genesis program, how you view cards as part of your ecosystem, right, going forward. And then we can after that, we can get into sort of the Marinade relationship a little bit. But why don't you start? Why don't you start with, if you don't mind, why don't you start with why you're choosing to launch with Metaplex?
Absolutely. So, there were a few points in our last 4 years where, there was some narrative around RWAs and there was some narrative around token launches and that kind of stuff. And so during those times, we were introduced to some launch pads and we were introduced to some centralized exchanges, introduced to some VCs, and nearly every one of them was kind of like, well, how many members in your community? That would be their first question. How many monthly active users, this and that. And, here, do you think if we launch the token, your community will buy it? right? And essentially, what that all translates into is, hey, let's get the token in the hands of some KOLs. They're going to go and say a lot of crazy things about the token and make it seem like it's going to save cancer. And then we're going to launch it on a launch pad and have just ridiculously low liquidity. We're going to use automated, we're going to use market makers to go and pump the token to make it look like it's going to skyrocket. And all the time, what we want you to do is we want you to push it to your community, right? And what's that saying to me is like, hey, let's use your community as exit liquidity to make these KOLs and make these VCs some money. And like the first time I was like, oh, this is a bit shady. Let's go here. This other launchpad seems a little bit more legit. Let's talk to them. And they said the same exact thing over and over again is, and they wouldn't say it outright, but you take a look at like how they set it up, and literally every single one was, hey, let's figure out a way to dump this token on your users. And that's just gross, right? Like, the whole point of Collector Crypt is to like make a fun, safe, and a good environment and an ecosystem community to trade cards. Our point was not to figure out a narrative to launch a token to dump it on our community, right? So every single time we kind of walked down that path and we got the same answer, we kind of said no, and we stuck our heads down and said, well, eventually something will happen and people will realize that you can't keep doing this. And of course, what happened was, Pump Fund came out and they just took that whole, idea to an extreme, right? And then people were saying, well, why don't you just do a fair launch token on Pump Fund and see what happens and all this kind of stuff. And, like none of that just hit the right way. And so, I think meme coins, there's still certainly a lot of trading activity on meme coins, which is fine. But I think, the frenzy has kind of subsided. And I think, the rational heads have come back down and said, okay, if we're really going to grow Solana as an ecosystem, we need to start figuring out ways to support projects and products and teams that are building something that has durability. We need to figure out how we're going to get, the next million users onto Solana, not as a way to rug them with meme coins, but as a way to solve problems they're having in their life. Nobody's walking down, the street in New York saying, "Oh man, I want to figure out how I can, trade this better or do this better," right? They're saying, "Man, I wish I didn't have to pay 13% on that eBay trade," or "Man, I can't believe I have to spend an hour dealing with this thing that got stolen." And so, we want to hit those people. We want to hit the people that until now haven't had a need to go into crypto, because this will be kind of like, we're early. Everybody says, oh, we're so early. It's going to be so big 5 years from now. But you look around the table and nobody is building for the future, right? Nobody's even thinking about it. People are just trying to figure out, well, how do we get another 50,000 retail people in here to trade meme coins so that we could get some more exit liquidity and fees. And that's got to change. And Metaplex, being the OG developer of all the token smart contracts on Solana, they built the first NFT marketplace. They've done so much in the system, and meeting the team, they are just incredible. And they truly want to, build this community and this environment on Solana that is going to allow it to, 100x from where it is right now. Not in price. Whenever I say 100x, I mean in terms of like value that it's providing to the world. And when I met with these guys for the first time, and like I'll shout out like Clay and Steven and Brandon and Nick and Devin and all these guys, they have a unified vision to build Solana to be what we all want it to be, the vision that we're thinking 5 years from now. And so when I finally met a team and a launchpad that shared that vision with me, it was like a no-brainer. It was like the light finally clicked on, and I'm like, where have you been all my life? And so, I can't say any more strongly how happy we are to work with Metaplex on this.
Man, well said. Yeah, SMS, what's up, brother?
Yeah, I just want to jump in. I love everything you're sharing. And one thing, man, is you stick around long enough, things align, and your people find you, and it's not as much of a chase. And you develop a product that people want, and that's I think what I'm hearing here. I would just want to ask, like, have you checked out other ones? What was the vetting process for you? And I mean, all of that sounds great, but what was like the nail in the coffin to say this is what we're riding out?
The nail in the coffin for some of the other launch pads I was talking to.
Yeah, yeah. What like kind of like remove them? What were some of the red flags or the reasons to like say no, I'm
Yeah.
out. I'd rather move in this direction.
Yeah, so some of the red flags were, one, okay, you have these VCs that are on your cap table. Can you go and redo their contracts so that they don't get any unlocked tokens for 12 months? And my response was, well, hey, they were supporting us 3 years ago when nobody else was, right? And what are we going to do instead? And the answer of what's instead is, oh, here we can get these KOLs. We'll give these KOLs some tokens, but they will invest in SAFT, but you probably should give them some tokens on the side and give them 25% liquidity at TGE. And what they're going to do is they're going to really go onto all their streams and all their users and say how great this launch is going to be. And but yeah, they're definitely going to dump the tokens after a few minutes. They get their 25%, which basically pays for them, and then they have some kicker on the end, right? So the whole conversation, like usually with these launch pads, within 10 minutes turns into let's take a look at your current cap table. Let's figure out a way to screw everybody who supports you, including your community. But here's how we're going to 30x your token, right? So that's kind of one red flag. Another red flag is when you talk to a launchpad and you say, oh, hey, give me your deal sheet, right? They say, okay, here's the launches we've done in the last 6 months, right? And they give you a sheet, and the way they rank their success is by how many X their launches have done, right? So you have a launch and it says, oh, this one got a 60x, this one got a 50x. Our average return is 25.3x, right? When they start talking about numbers like that, what they're doing is they're trying to say, okay, we'll launch the token at $20 million. We're going to pump it to $600 million. We'll let your VCs, we'll let the KOLs that come and do it out, and then you're going to have a negative chart until you decide to shut down the platform. And then you look, I could probably pull up some of those deal sheets today. 99% of those companies' platforms don't exist anymore. And 99% of the money that was raised is totally off of the backs of their communities and off the backs of retail, right? And so, those are some major red flags. Another red flag is like, hey, we're going to bring you, 100 KOLs, right? We have a huge KOL network. They're going to all go and pump the token on whatever, things they do, and you say, okay, are these guys all KYC'd? Are they all going to sign a SAFT, right, in terms of their token purchase? And they're like, maybe some of them will, but usually, these guys won't sign a SAFT. And I'm like, well, is that because these guys are located in jurisdictions where they're not allowed to sign a SAFT? Yes. Is that because the launchpad is, creating 50 or 100 KOLs that don't even exist, and the launchpad has 50 or 100 wallets that they're just going to, get a 30x on? Yes. Right. So those are all super red flags. And, and I think any time when you just scratch the surface a little bit and you ask for a little bit more diligence and you try to just really understand the process,
Yeah.
if they give you an answer that you don't understand, that's a red flag.
Yep. I appreciate that. One of the things I ask those questions for is transparency. I think being able to explain that to other people, or these are the things you should watch for if you ever find yourself in that position, and what you've gone through to get to, this point. I got to commend that. It takes diligence, and it's like I said, it serves a better product. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, my pleasure. So I could transition over to the token launch. So
Yep.
the launch is going to be tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., right? So it's going to be a launch pool mechanism. So this is different than the two previous, projects that went through Metaplex Genesis. The first one, DeFi Tuna, raised, I think, like $2.5 million at like a 50 million valuation. So they DeFi Tuna set the valuation, and they sold tokens into that, right? And they were able to sell out. I don't know the number. Probably one of you guys do, but it was on the matter of minutes. The next one that went out was Portals. We all love Portals. They were able to sell out, I think, in 7 seconds, and they also did like a fixed price thing, and they raised a little bit less money, but great things for Portals. We're going to be the first ones that use a launch pool mechanism, and that's a little bit different. So what that essentially means is that, just imagine we're going to throw a party, right? And at the end of the party, we're going to figure out, well, hey, this is what the valuation of Collector Crypt is. And for the next 2 days, everybody can go in and say, all right, I'm going to throw some money in the pool at the party. And at the end of the day, we'll count all the money that's in there and divide that by 5%, which is what we're putting in there of our token supply. We'll divide that number in there, and guess what? That's the value of Collector Crypt when it goes out, which means that Collector Crypt could be worth $1 million. It could be worth $100 million, and it's all up to the people who are participating in the launch pool. People have said, well, hey, you should go and talk and get some, VCs or things like that. This is all the kind of stuff we hear, right? You should get people to put money in there and get some special things on the side and all that kind of stuff. And my whole point is not to try to create I wouldn't say that that's a false narrative, but it's a misleading narrative, right? I want this pool to be truly representative of what's out there, right? If you are interested in Collector Crypt as a platform and you believe in the team and you believe in the future, if you believe in RWAs on Solana, this is where you should go. We're not going to try to manipulate this thing in any way, because that's totally against our ethos. And so, at the end of the day, if the pool goes out at a 10 million FDV, that's fine, because we are generating $4.5 million a year. We've generated $4.5 million in profit in the last 9 months, right? So, having a 10 million pool with that kind of profit, that is an awesome place to start, right? Can you imagine how we're going to be able to grow the value of that token with those types of metrics? If the pool goes out really high, that's also great, because, then we could use that value and we could use that resource to go and create more visibility for the platform, and it'll enable us to grow, right? So what we really want to do is we really want to get a good snapshot at the end of that pool for what the ecosystem believes our platform is worth. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with doing a fixed sale, because everybody has reasons to do things, and that's cool. But we're going to let the community decide what our platform is worth. So that's one. The launch pool opens tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern time. The first 24 hours, there's no difference. You could show up in the first 5 seconds. You could show up in the last 5 seconds, and your token purchase will be handled identically. After the first 24 hours, there's going to be a 12-hour cooldown, meaning that so the first 24 hours, there's going to be a higher allocation for the funds that go in. The next 12 hours, that additional allocation is going to taper linearly to 0. So it's going to start at 25% and it's going to taper linearly to 0. Our hope is that people, if they wanted to come in, they come in within the first 24 hours and not wait. But the idea here is that, let's say you come in the first 5 minutes, and then too much money goes in the pool, and you're like, I love Collector Crypt, but I really don't think it's worth $100 million, right? Or I really don't think it's worth $50 million. I love the platform. I love this. I will support them in other ways, but I don't think that's a good use of my funds. So I would like to remove my contribution to the launch pool. So that cooldown phase is really to allow that to happen. So you get to go in and really think carefully about, here's what the value looks like. Is this really where I want to be? And let's pull it out at no penalty, right? So you can't get any penalty by withdrawing for that 12-hour cooldown. And then the last 12 hours is the penalty phase, right? So this penalty phase, hopefully everybody who wanted to get out, has gotten out. Hopefully, the market has kind of found its equilibrium for what the value of the platform is. And the last 12 hours is just to kind of prevent some shenanigans, right? So from time 36 up to 48, there's going to be a linearly increasing penalty starting at 0, and it's going to end at 25%. That means if you put in 100 SOL into the launch pool and you withdraw those funds in the last 5 seconds, you're going to get 75 SOL back. The pool is going to keep that 25 SOL. And the reason that's there, hey, why are you penalizing people who wanted to go in? The reason why that's there is, say, for example, if you were a group of individuals in a cabal, or if you were a large deep pockets investor or something, and you really wanted to get Collector Crypt tokens or cards at a cheap price. The strategy would be, hey, let's put in $5 or $10 million right away in the launch pool. And then people will see it and say, oh my gosh, there's no way Collector Crypt's worth $200 million. That's ridiculous. I'm not, that's crazy. I'm glad I missed it, right? So all of these people are going to see that 100 million, that huge FTB, and they're not going to put the funds in. And then what this group can do, this cabal, 5 seconds before the end, they can pull out 95% of their funds. And all of a sudden, they're able to get 5% of the token supply for a few $100,000, right? So this penalty phase is really to prevent that, gaming of the launch pool mechanism. But keep an eye out, because even though we're saying that might happen, but what we want is, like, to prevent that. It's important that people come in early, and that they really take a close look at over the next 2 days, take a close look over time to see what that implied fully diluted value is, and make sure you're still kind of comfortable with it. And of course, in the last few seconds, if it dumps like crazy because somebody's trying to game it, it might be good to have some SOL on hand to jump in and get some cards at the cheap. So I think there's some game theory involved. There's some degen kind of aspects to it, but overall that's the strategy of the launch pool. We are going to do our best. So the launch pool is going to close on Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern time. We are going to do our best to migrate the launch pool proceeds. Metaplex has some fees that they're going to get. We're going to take the SOL that's in there. We're going to turn it into USDC. We're going to create a liquidity pool. More likely than not, it's going to be on Raydium. We're going to create a liquidity pool with about 2.5% of the token supply. And then that's all going to go live at 3 p.m. Eastern time. So we have 3 hours to kind of do all of that work. And then the token will start trading Friday at 3 p.m. In addition, as you guys have seen the tokenomics, we have some allocation for the community. So we are doing a 5% in the launch pool. We're actually going to do 2.5% as a, we call it for funsies. We call it a non-drop, and I'll get into the reason why we do that. But it's essentially an airdrop. We have a 2.5% allocation, so half of the size of liquidity. On the Bonneville Salt Flats at 500 miles an hour, and we're hoping that we could all meet in the middle and hit the brakes and not crash into each other. So that's kind of how we're thinking about this coordination, but it should be fine. I'm not too stressed. Here, let me turn off my microphone so I could scream a little bit because I'm too stressed. All right, I'm back. So, the next question, what does the token do? Our plan for the token is different than what most projects do. And that's probably, due to a few factors. One, we obviously, our platforms are already deployed. We're obviously, generating profits, making lots of revenues, growing really fast. We don't necessarily need the funds in that launch pool to do stuff with our platform. It's always nice to have more money. It's always nice to hire more people, but I think we have enough, income generating capacity to do that without the launch pool. So the question is like, why are you raising a token then? Why don't you just keep it all for yourself? Well, the obvious answer is, we think we can kind of create a new kind of RWA narrative on chain, meaning that we've seen all these DATs go out. We've seen kind of renewed interest in RWAs. We recognize the value of crypto tokens to be kind of like a very low friction way to get exposure to certain asset classes, right? So, there's a lot that I cannot say right now about the token. That's all going to come a few weeks after the token launch, and that's because of regulatory. That's because we're trying to do things in the right way. But what I can say is that after fees and after the provision for the Raydium liquidity pool, all of the remaining funds, we're simply going to go and buy trading cards. So let's say there's a couple million left after all that stuff goes out. We're going to literally go and buy $2 million, probably of mostly Pokemon cards, and then in the future we'll put sports cards and stuff in there. But all of that money is going to be trading cards, and those trading cards, those are all going to be tokenized on chain. And the way our platform works, you could think of it, our gacha machine has a liquidity pool, a trading card liquidity pool. In our gacha machine, people are pulling cards out, they're receiving ownership of those cards, they're selling them back. We own every single card that's in the gacha. We're not playing any games with that. And the really exciting part about that is that you could think of that just like we think about token liquidity pools like on Raydium. Those assets can be used in various ways to generate value, right? So obviously the very easy example for us is we own the cards in the gacha machine. Those cards, by use of the gacha machine, are generating value, right? And over time, that value is going to compound. It's going to do what it's going to do. In addition, trading cards themselves have been a phenomenal asset class for the last 25, 30 years. People have been trading baseball cards for 100 years. So these are very, very established deep markets in Web 2. But what has been lacking is a way to get broad exposure to this asset class at low fees, right? So you can't go to Collecticon and say, oh man, I'm worth $100 million. I really want to efficiently buy $2 million worth of trading cards for my family office, right? Because I think trading cards are going to continue growing in value at 15 to 20% per year for the next 20 years, right? You can't do that. You're going to go and talk to tables. You're going to go and buy the cards and do all this kind of stuff. Probably get ripped off. And then you have all the cards. How are you going to store them? How are you going to insure them, right? How do you know what they're doing, right? And then when you finally go and sell them, what do? Do you go and list $2 million worth of cards on eBay? Spend about half an hour to an hour per card, pay 13% transaction fees, deal with all the shipping and handling and the fraud and all that kind of stuff. There's no way to buy and sell a diversified portfolio of trading cards in size. And what we are trying to do is create the first ever vehicle to allow that to happen. So we are we're allowing people to, so the cards token is going to own a lot of trading cards in its treasury. That's kind of step one. Step two, big question mark. Probably talk a little bit more about it in a few weeks. Step three, take over the world. You guys probably remember Underpants Gnomes. That's that's literally our whole model right now. You heard it here first.
So, I mean, it's an interesting concept that, like, owning a token, it's not just, how do I put this? Like, they're actually, like, it's going to be one of the first tokens where there's actually something behind it, right? Which is just like overall purchasing of cards in the market. Now, how is it being decided, like, which cards are being, like, purchased and added to your vault? Is the token holders in charge of that, or is it your team?
So the team is going to be in charge of it initially, because we have the most visibility to, you know, what the operations of the gacha machine will need, right? So we could look at the gacha machine on an instantaneous basis and say, oh man, we're running pretty low on cards that are worth between $200 and $400.
Mm-hmm.
Or even more specifically, we're running pretty low on vintage cards between, you know, these two prices. We have too many bubble mews. The bubble there might pop, right? We need to, you know, not buy so many bubble mews, or we need to not buy so many ponchos. They're down 5 or 10%, right? So these are decisions that the team is making on a real-time basis to, you know, curate the cards that are currently in the gacha machine, and we have the most visibility to do that. And but that also means that, you know, the cards that are missing from that machine are missing because the users, they won those cards or they opened those cards in the packs and they wanted to keep them, right? So what we want to do is we just want to keep on filling the channel of cards that people actually want to keep, right? Because we view our performance not only in terms of how many packs are ripped, not in terms of how much profit do we generate. We view our performance with how many cards did people keep, right? And we want to maximize that, because if people are not keeping cards, you know, that means they're getting extracted, right? And so if people are keeping as many cards as possible, then that's great, because that means we're doing our job and fulfilling our mission to, you know, realize efficient trading of collectibles on chain. And then, you know, I guess that's, you know, leads into the question for the future, because you could imagine, you know, we right now we probably have $1.5 million worth of cards, or 2 million in our vending machine. But in the future, you know, we might have $50 million worth of cards in the treasury, right? So, you know, we don't need $50 million worth of cards in the machine at any point. But some things we could do is we could allow, you know, users to kind of customize their own vending machines, right? So they could go in and pull some levers and pull some buttons and really kind of like focus in and hone in on the card pool that they want to interact with. That's one thing we could do. Another thing we could do is we could say to partners, and we're actually right now working with 3 separate future partners. You know, they're not cooked enough to announce, but there's 3 separate entities that we're working on that want to tap into our trading card liquidity pool. Meaning that, you know, imagine if we have an API, right? Somebody can go out and build a front end that does something entirely different with trading cards. And they can interact with our API, and they can interact with our trading card liquidity pool to do stuff on their platform, right? And they don't need to go in and figure out, well, how do I buy these cards at good prices? They don't have to figure out, well, how do I store them or ship them or, you know, authenticate them or do any of that kind of stuff. All they figure out is what their user experience is, and we provide a robust tech stack for them to tap into, right? And so when we have more funds, more cards in the liquidity pool, these third-party partnerships are going to pop up, and they're going to be using our cards. Not only on Solana, we have partnerships brewing on other chains as well. And you know, you could envision us being like the largest trading card liquidity pool provider for all of blockchain. So any ideas that you might have on how to use these trading cards in your platform, it could be like, you know, maybe you have a game where you run around a realm and you fight monsters, and right, and you beat the boss, and when you beat the boss, you get a random card, right, as a prize. That would be pretty cool. So these are all things that we're building. The APIs and stuff. They, you know, I should be a little more. I shouldn't be so cagey. These APIs are already built. People are already testing them. You know, this is not something that would be nice to have. It's something that is happening right now. People are testing the APIs as we are on this call right now.
Man, as we come up to, we're gonna want to get into the marinade side of this at some point, but it just got me thinking, like, on a separate note, what we should do, and Sean's probably thinking the same thing, or SMS is probably thinking the same thing. At some point, we need to set up a recipe within Marinade where, if you stake your soul, basically every time you earn, let's say the gotcha machine is $50 buy-in. Every time you earn $50 worth of soul from just regular staking, it automatically in the back end pulls the gotcha machine, and then when you check your wallet, you just have cards. You just have cards sitting in your wallet, so you're not earning any soul. Essentially, it's all being auto spent on cards. That would be really fun as a collector.
I was thinking a similar thing, but not the like the cap. Like once you hit that, I was more of like a lottery. Like you're entering in, and like the rewards would go back to either Marinade or the collector crypt. But very same idea. I was like, oh, wait a second. But hearing that, that's pretty bullish because I got a game developer where there are ideas. I've thought of that. I've thought of like IRL events. If you had specific one-on-one cards of certain things that were worth something, all of that stuff is pretty cool, and it gets me thinking. But very bullish on you, man. I love what you guys are putting together.
Thank you, and that's an awesome idea, Nikki, on giving trading card rewards. I actually love it, and that's something, our tech stack right now is at the point where that would probably take just a couple days to implement if you guys have a reward system already kind of plugged in on your end. The APIs are all working on mainnet, so that would be super easy to do.
Yeah, basically it would just be like, okay, we would set commission to 100% on our end, right? And as you would be staking with us, right? We would be taking all the rewards from you, so it'd be almost like you're not earning. But then in reality, what's happening is all that APY that we're taking from you, we're giving it to you all back, because all of it's then being used on the gotcha, and then those cards are being dropped into your wallet. So you don't have to do anything; it'd be totally passive, and the cards would just appear there. But enough from me on that. I know we've had a few people in the audience that probably have questions. And I know there's been people waiting for a while here, but we have a Metaplex representative here, Stephen Hess, who's been, at Metaplex for 3-4 years now. I haven't talked to you in a couple of years, so it's good to hear from you.
Yeah, what's up, Nikki? Good to see you. Hey, to him.
It's been a little while.
Yeah, it's been a minute. The technical answer has been at Metaplex since forever. but
what I said 3-4 years, and what the answer would be 4 years then, right?
Well, no, it's kind of, as you know, I started Metaplex when I was at Labs, so like literally named Metaplex, like wrote the first brief, and then it was like a year after that I jumped on full time. So I'm somewhat joking, but yeah, from day one, it's good to see you.
Yeah. This is probably not the best time to catch up with the audience here, but I hope your family is doing well, and hope we get to see each other soon in either in London for DAS or Abu Dhabi for Breakpoint. That'd be great.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm sure you're excited about this whole Genesis program, and I'm happy to see Collector Crypt working with you guys, and I'm super psyched about Marinade now joining the partnership group. Maybe you have some comments about this launch specifically, or you want to talk about just Genesis in general.
I'm just really excited, and I think Toom covered the mechanics of the launch. I think what really stands out here, beyond just like the fact that this is going to be a fully on-chain launch of the token, is just like the product that Toom and team have built here. And when we started Metaplex, actually thinking about those early days, we had looked at Metaplex as sitting alongside Serum, for those that have been following along since the beginning. Serum being this like keystone on-chain infra for DeFi, and then Metaplex supporting commerce. And like this commerce vision is like really just like staring us in the face when you go to Collector Crypt, which is the ability to actually sell real world assets, have e-commerce that's effectively working on chain. And these markets are incredibly liquid and global. In a way, Pokemon has become like the generational glue between like millennials, like Gen Z, Gen Alpha, and I think it's a really incredible opportunity to show what fully peer-to-peer commerce looks like and what like internet capital markets look like when you're talking about not just bits, but like atoms and physical things. So we're really excited to be to be working with the team on the launch pool, because it really is the most community centered way of launching a token. Everyone gets the same price. There's no cabal games, there's no front running, there's no sniping. And so I think a lot of the fatigue around people in crypto with token launches is this feeling that there's someone sitting behind the curtain and that they don't fully understand the rules of the game, and that there's they're playing against the house that has some sort of invisible edge. And so our goal with Genesis was to remove that and to give confidence to both founders that that their community can trust the launch, but then of course everyone who's participating. And the big dream here is that we have companies like SpaceX and OpenAI, and they're obviously like in sort of one sort of extreme of the spectrum, but there's a huge private equity and startup capital market for new technologies that is just completely inaccessible to everyday people. You have to like be in the right fund or the right accredited investor to have any way of participating in the development of these early technologies. And so I think this really provides an opportunity for founders that want to build with their communities in those early stages and build a project that is owned and supported by the people that are using it. So we can be more excited. Like there's a lot of talk about internet capital markets, and they're really just you have to be looking for the right founders and the right teams that are actually building it, and like Collector Crypt is that by every measure.
And well said.
I also just bought a really sweet Pikachu, so I'm
which one?
Pretty excited.
We know
that.
You can give details here.
Well, I figured I'd start my kids off with like some starter pack original, right? So I got 2023 PSA 10 Pikachu Pokemon Japanese edition. So there you go.
Is it like the OG art?
It is the OG art, yeah, and it's got like a little holographic trim. It was only $80. It was like, this looks great. Yeah, absolutely.
Free $3.99. Free. Yeah, no, that's amazing, man. Thank you for giving that perspective. And like I said, I know Collector Crypt is psyched to be launching with you guys. Marinade is psyched to be a Genesis partner. So I appreciate you coming up here to give your perspective there. Is anyone else in the audience, even if you're all done, want to ask some questions here? We are over time. This has already been probably our longest spaces ever, but it's popping, so happy to keep it going. Yeah, Dutch, what's up, brother? Your hand raise has been acknowledged. You may now speak.
Come on, Dutch.
You're so close. Just, yeah, all right. I know, I'm sorry. Yeah, Spaces is horrible. What I recommend is close out of the app, come back in, I'll invite you back up, and you'll be first in line. Yeah, MIDI crypto, MIDI crypt, have at it. You're up.
Yeah, thank you so much for the mic. I really appreciate Nikki. Thanks so much, Marion, for accepting me to for this opportunity to speak here on this piece. So it's been an amazing journey. Thanks so much for this mic. I really appreciate for you. I appreciate. So my questions is not really like that. So because I was currently running a challenge, IP challenge for Marine Finance, and one of these guys came to my DM to ask a full question. So he said he said, "What is the minimum so to stake on Marinate Finance?" Then I actually replied him and said one so. Then he said, "Can Marinate Finance at least decrease or decrease the minimum so to be staked to like 0.2 or 0.3?" Then I asked him the reason why. And he said, because some people might not have much money, much money to stake. Some people are willing to stake with Managed Finance, but they don't have much to stake. They don't have up to one so to stake on Managed Finance. So that is why. Then I told him that if I have the opportunity to come to be accepted as a speaker on Managed Finance, please, I'm going to say this, because I'm also willing to help others too. So please, can anything be done with that? Some people are willing some people are willing to stake with Managed Finance, but they don't have to up to up to like one so. So please, can something like that be done?
Happy to answer that. Just yep. Thank you so much for coming up here and representing so many people who, a lot of times we get way ahead of ourselves and we're like, this person lost 10,000 soul doing this, and this person put 100,000 soul into a DAT, and we lose perspective of money sometimes here. And so much about crypto is about empowering people who maybe be underbanked or don't have that much soul, because soul is for everyone, right? What I would recommend is we have to keep it for native. So for native staking, in order to basically create a stake account, you need one soul. What I'll say is we have MSOL, which is liquid staking, which you can buy on the market any amount of. I think I have basically any of my scattered wallets. I have a fraction of MSOL in basically all of them. So you can go right on Marinade Finance on our app and swap to MSOL there, our liquid staking token. Or, you can head over to Jupe or anyone else and swap into MSOL. There's tons and tons and tons of MSOL liquidity. We're really proud of that. So you won't get hit hard on that at all. You'll get a fair swap, if not even make a little bit of money on the swap. And you can basically purchase any fraction of MSOL. Right now, the APY in MSOL is actually even higher than native. Often it's the other way around, but MSOL is over 8% APY. So I would recommend to your friends that are asking that question to just pick up a small amount of MSOL, extremely low risk. You'll get even higher APY, and they'll win that way. And then if there's follow-up questions, feel free to DM me. Essentially, there might be questions over, hey, how is this earning? Like, is there more SOL getting put in my wallet? Happy to explain one-on-one with you how LSTs work and how you're accruing value.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you for coming up and asking that.
Thank you so much, man.
Yeah. Dutch, do you still have your question? Or are you wrecked on Twitter Spaces Tech? Goodbye, Dutch. Goodbye forever. All right. Does anyone else have some questions for Collector Crypt?
Yeah, hey y'all. Good morning.
Hello, Quack.
Hi. Yeah, I had a question for Collector Crypt. So for a smaller NFT project that was interested in having trading cards and maybe getting them incorporated into your system, how would you suggest they start looking into that process? Like, where's the best information? Is it sending a DM? Is there a website with the easy kind of layout of how that works? I missed the beginning of this conversation, so I'm sorry if you already stated that, but I appreciate the answer. Thanks, y'all.
Yeah, no problem. Great question. One of the things that the founders of Collector Crypt are all very proud of is that we are very reachable. We're not unobtainable. We have a bunch of our users here in the channel, and they know if they send me a DM or something, I will probably get back to them, within a reasonable amount of time. This week might be a little hard. I apologize to you guys because of the token launch, but just come into our Discord or send us a DM on Twitter. Discord will probably be a little better. In our Discord, I am Autec, AUTEC, and you'll probably see me jib-jabbering away in general chat. But please come in and say hello.
Awesome, I appreciate that. Thank you.
I'm gonna go ahead and fire this one away. Collector, I got a question. I got a bunch of boxes from over the years of 90s, late 80s baseball, football cards. They're probably not all protected and, preserved the best way. They're probably sticking to each other a little bit, but they've been in, the same box. What would be where would I start with this? There's about, I guess, 2 totes worthy, like, I guess, average size that you get from a supermarket or something. I don't know the exact size, but there's a lot of them. And it's like all the guys from, the 90s up till, I guess, mid to late, and I kind of stopped collecting them, but they've been sitting in there for years. Where would I start with this to like go through them? Like, do you guys have anywhere in your Discord or anything for beginners that want to, go through this stuff? Because like, I don't want to just throw them out or give them to somebody. I want to eventually go through it because I'm seeing the growth of everything from trading cards to TCG games and all of those kind of things that have me, more and more interested, especially with the Web3 space kind of having a parallel with that with a lot of collectors and stuff. Where would I start? Do you have anything in your Discord that offers, new users or anything of that nature, or collectors, I guess, to that extent?
Yeah, so this is a great question, and maybe I'll start with the horror story that a lot of people in your kind of position will do. So, you have a few totes full of cards, probably unsorted, like you just opened packs and stuck them in there. So all of your big hits, your grails are kind of mixed with, the shitters that are in there. And what people typically do is they'll take them all, they'll say, oh man, hey, there's this card store over here, we're going to go and see what's going on. And I'm not generalizing. All card stores come in many different flavors. There's some that are really high integrity and real honest, and they'll go through it and they'll say, okay, look, these bulk, we don't offer anything for them, but we'll go through it carefully. We'll look at all the cards of value, and we'll probably give you just for doing the work, we'll give you 60 cents on the dollar, right, or 70 cents on the dollar. And that's kind of the good experience, quote unquote. The bad experience is when you go and take the tote to somebody and they go through it and they're leafing through it quickly. They see the grails as they're leafing through, but they have a poker face on, right? They're just going through real fast, and they say something like, well, hey, this is real. These 80s and 90s cards, they were totally overprinted. There really isn't much demand for them. This is when the printing frenzy was going wild, and there's probably cards in there that are worth a few bucks. I'll give you $100 for the whole thing, right? And that happens every single day, and it's kind of sad because you might have like a really nice looking, the most graded card ever in the world is that Ken Griffey Jr. baseball card. Like it's an iconic card. It would be totally in that era that you're talking about. And, these kind of things, right? Like, they might see some of that stuff and they'll just rip the seller off because they know that seller has not been in the card ecosystem for 20 years, right? It's not like that seller's going to come back and buy more product from the store or anything. So this is the one chance for that store to go in and make a ton of money on somebody who doesn't really know any better, and that's kind of scummy. So that's what you don't want to do. But for us, like if you have a ton of cards, the things that we could offer, we have a lot of people in our channel. I'm not going to volunteer Munitor. I see him down there in the chat, but he's really big on sports cards. We have a lot of people that would certainly, if you get some really nice looking photos, if you have an idea, like if you know anything about baseball and the difference between a rookie card and this kind of stuff, or the cards that are a little bit harder to pull, if you can go in and do a bit of work and a bit of your own diligence on it and take some nice quality photos, even with your cell phone, you can just stick 30 cards on the table and take a photo and just drop it in our sports channel and say, hey, I don't really know what these are worth. I have about 5,000 cards. What should I do? You might get people saying, well, hey, go in and take all those 5,000, take photos of all of them. I'll tell you which ones are probably worth something, right? I think you just gotta, you have to lift up, you have to put on your boots and do some work.
Gotcha.
But at least in our chat, I don't think anybody in our chat is gonna try to rip you off.
Right. Well,
right?
that's what I was looking for. Is like I want to find a community. I don't want to give them away. It's something like I was huge into baseball, sports, and everything growing up. My grandfather actually did do some of the work and took the rookie cards, took the special cards, sleeved them up. So those are all like sorted in the front, and then you have the other ones, the specialty highlights, different prints, all of those kind of different cards throughout the all of these, and they're sorted from brand, team, year, all of that kind of stuff. So we did a little bit of the legwork there, but I was just apprehensive to go anywhere because I knew that somebody was going to see me, spot me. I'd be like, this guy has no idea what he's doing. We're going to beat him over the head. And I would have probably taken it because it's like, what else was I going to do with it? You know, but now that we're in a position like this, I wanted, you know, other people that might be in the situation that got something up in the attic. And I figured it was dust a little bit of the, or take a little bit of the dust off the top, move stuff around, see what you got, and, you know, kind of go from there. So something I'll probably do slowly and surely. But I'm glad that I have a source to get to and, you know, communicate with you guys. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, no, my pleasure, our pleasure. And you know, one of the things that we also do for users, and you've probably seen a few guys, you know, tweeting about it, is they might have an old collection, right? And they say, well, I really don't know what to do. You know, we'll take a look at it, and if it's like enriched enough, meaning that, you know, it's not like one card out of 1,000 that's worth doing something with, but if like a third or half of the cards in there are like reasonable, so like for example your filtered list that you and your grandpop did, you know, we will, you know, take those cards and we could go in and look at each one of them for you. We'll get them graded, and you know, we'll be totally transparent, and once they're all graded, we'll say here's all the cards. We'll stick them in your wallet if you want, or we'll make you like an instant offer. And usually our instant offers are like 85% to 90% of the fair market value.
Ooh,
So
like
that's kind of what we do, and we've done that for a lot of Pokemon collections in our community over time.
That's very cool. I didn't get into the Pokemon stuff. I loved them. The artwork was cool. I just never started collecting, but I always had like a love for the sports cards, and it kind of died out. Seeing there be a little bit of resurgence, I'm super excited. I'm probably never going to sleep again. That's your fault. But I saw Casey's hand pop up, and then Dean came through.
Hey guys, appreciate you for having me up here. So question for Collector Crypt. How do you compare yourselves to a company like Fidgetals, and how do you set yourselves apart from them?
That's a great question. You know, first, you know, really enjoy conversations with Jake. Also goes as Master Colada. You know, love that we have other platforms building on Solana, because I think, you know, a real important part of what we do is building community and educating and that kind of stuff. And if Jake and team can go in and you know, bring on another 100 people onto Solana to trade cards, you know, my hope is that those 100 people will take a look at both platforms and you know, find the communities and ecosystems they enjoy, you know, hanging out with. And you know, it's kind of like we are so small in the world right now. Like you could think Collector Crypt might be less than 1/100% of like total you know, revenue in trading cards, and Courtyard, our bigger competitor, is like 3 times our size, right? So that's the biggest. Courtyard's number 1, we're number 2 in terms of like volume, and we're still like way less than 1/100th of, you know, super small. The more that we could do to, you know, provide a platform that is transparent, that is safe, that, you know, is not, you know, doing any gimmicks, that has, you know, strong, solid education, the more that we can, you know, let people know out there that, you know, Web3 is a safe place to go, right? Because I think you go and talk to normies, you know, I shouldn't even like that. I shouldn't even call you. You go and talk to people, right? And people say, "Oh, isn't, you know, crypto where you get, you know, wrecked and rug pulled and this and that?" Yeah, I do have $1 million worth of trading cards, but I would never bring them on chain because I'm afraid you know, I'm just going to get robbed, right? You know, the more that we can educate people like that who love the hobby, love the games, the more that we could build better products that could go and tap into that, the better. So, you know, I know Fidgetals is a competitor of what we're doing, but I think we're, you know, I would use a better term. I'd call it co-opetition. Like, we're both pulling the boat the same way. We're all trying to like get people onto Solana to go in and you know, open packs and enjoy that experience. In terms of like specific differences between, you know, Collector Crypt and Fidgetals, I would just encourage you to go in and hang out with both communities and see what they are. We do things a little bit differently. Collector Crypt's been around, quite a bit longer than Fidgetals, at least with a active platform. But we're learning from Fidgetals every single day. So we appreciate the competition, and I think what our goal is at Collector Crypt is just to make sure everything is done, in a transparent, clean, and positive way, so that anybody who comes into Solana looking to trade real world collectibles, and this isn't just trading cards, this is also like Baxis, who we're also really good friends with. Baxis tokenizes wine and whiskey and stuff. Like, just imagine, like, if you have a room and you say, here, this is the safe dealer's room. We want everybody to go into that room and just feel safe, go into any storefront that they want, because we offer different products and services, and some may be a good fit for one and not such a good fit for the other. So I'll say that in terms of like what's specifically public. I think our gacha machine, we vending machine, we tend to go out with a positive expected value. I think Fidgetals has probably an even expected value, and that's not bad. I think Courtyard and BZ and some of the other guys all have even expected value, meaning that you put 50 in, you'll get 50 out. For us, you put 50 in, you get 55 out. And the reason why we're able to do that is because we have such a strong dealer network. We're buying like $400,000 to $500,000 worth of cards per week to go in there, and we're able to buy massive collections. We have massive liquidity to be able to go and do that. So I think we're just in a different spot, but I think Fidgetals project is pretty cool, and encourage you to try both platforms.
Appreciate the answer. Thanks.
All right, Tom, what do you think? This is we're hitting the 90-minute mark here. How do we feel about maybe talking about the how Metaplex, Collector Crypt, and Marinade are working together here with Genesis, and then maybe a little call to action and send everyone on their way?
Yeah, very cool. So a little bit about my history. I remember I remember reading about Solana when I think it was like a little bit, like maybe $1 or $1.50 per token, or $2 a token. And I remember reading about it, and on the same page it was like they were also talking about Cardano, and I think Cardano was at like a similar kind of value. And I was looking at it, I'm like, it's going to be really hard to take down Ethereum. It's going to be really hard to, like, I think it has to be an EVM. I had all that, max ETH vibes, right? And so I didn't jump into Solana for another few months. But I think right when I got to Solana, because I was also, staking my ETH on Aave, and I was, looping on Aave with my ETH for, whatever else I was doing. I saw Marinade, and I'm like, oh, I gotta do the same thing on Solana that I'm doing on ETH, because I'm not in there trading back and forth, but I do want to hold the asset. I do want to get beta to the asset class, and I want to earn while I do it. So Marinade, I think you guys were the first one, and I thought your product was incredible. Right when I joined Solana back in 2021. And it's just an amazing journey to be able to sit here today with Marinade on an AMA, and one of the founders, OGs of Metaplex, just slinging our platform. I think that's super cool. And so one, I think Marinade has been through bear markets, they've been through bull markets, they've been through all the nasty stuff in terms of building a platform. And out of all the LSTs, I think MSOL and Marinade, where you stake directly, are I have the most confidence with what you guys have done, because you've been here the longest, you've been through the most. And I think as a team, your branding and your vibe has just been about safety, and about making sure that people are getting what they expect out of this, right? I mean, like, these types of staking things are not too complicated, but doing it the right way is incredibly important. And if we're gonna have some soul in our treasury, and we will, because we literally use Solana every single day for tens of thousands of transactions, right? When Solana gets expensive, it costs us more money to mint. When the network is congested, it costs us more money to do packs on the machine, right? So holding Solana in our treasury is incredibly important for us. And so, going back to that same idea, like, well, if we're just going to be sitting on a bunch of Solana, we should be, able to earn on that Solana in a safe way and in an easy way that we don't have to stress out about, because the team, we should be stressing out about our roadmap, our next product, or this. We shouldn't be ever stressing about, like, oh, am I getting the best yield? Is this safe? All that kind of stuff we don't want. So, like, that's why we're picking Marinade to basically to be our sole provider of a way to earn some SOL on our SOL that we need to have in our treasury just to mitigate our risk of volatility on the SOL price on our platform. I'm happy to go into more details, but I'm really bullish on you guys, and love that we have this opportunity to work with you on it.
Yeah, no worries. I appreciate that. So yeah, we're viewing, with getting into Genesis is perfect because there's all these new teams that we're gonna be able to get to work with through Metaplex, and we appreciate Collector Crypt being the first. But we view over at Marinade, we view staking as a financial tool, and it's like, okay, how can staking help your business? And for Collector Crypt, the answer is to how it can help their business is taking their SOL, staking it, and then using the rewards that are generated from Marinade to then fuel, provide the gas for their, their entire system that requires SOL, and hedge against, the idea that, SOL will continue to climb higher and higher in price to a point where it makes the company harder to operate. So that's how they view staking as a financial tool. Some of the other options that we're offering to other Metaplex Genesis partners is the idea of, if let's say you have a very large amount of your treasury and SOL from the token sale, being able to stake that with us and then use a portion of or the entirety of the proceeds for token buybacks. Again, using Marinade staking as a financial tool to benefit your business or your token, etc. Whatever works best for you. And it's not going to be one size fits all, right? But thinking of staking in a much more broader sense, and how does this improve my business, right? Far beyond what is just the classic, stake SOL or don't, and nothing beyond that. So that's why we're so excited to get to work with all these new token launches. We're appreciative of Metaplex for letting us into Genesis, so we can get in front of all these new partners and see, hey, what can we bring to the table to improve their business with staking.
Very well said, Nikki. And I do want to say that, like, I'm just being very careful about what I say with regard to, like, buybacks and this kind of stuff as it relates to the token. Because I haven't said buybacks doesn't mean we're not considering it. And I'll just say, details on our token utility and how we plan to use everything will come after launch.
Yeah, I'm keeping my mouth shut on that side. Let you do the talking for how you want to use your token. I just want to make it clear on our side. It's like, hey, we're a tool for businesses to utilize, and whichever path you guys decide to go, we're here to support you with, as well as the other Genesis partners. With all that being said, call to action for the Marinade side is just we're going to keep it simple. We have so many updates going on. It would be another 20 minutes to go through it all. I would say we have a revamped website. Head to marinade.finance. From there, you can get to the Marinade app and explore all of the blogs and new products we've been putting out. ETF products. We have recipes out there. We had 3 new proposals that just passed. One of them being a burn. One being active staking rewards for people who are voting on governance proposals. Another one being our migrate campaign, which is millions of dollars worth of our token going to users who migrate their stake over to Marinade. So not only getting the highest APY in the market, but also getting rewarded for doing so. And that is enough Marinade shilling for now. That's my call to action. Tom, do you have a quick CTA you want to end off with?
Absolutely. So probably the best place to always see what we're up to is we try to get all of our information out on X. And I would say that just because of the way X is, we need to be very concise, meaning that you don't get all the information there, but to get all the information, come to our Discord. We do announcements, we do posts. I'm going to be doing a blog on our airdrop. I want to make sure that everybody understands how we calculated it and why we did it this way, and also, kind of ideas and thoughts for the future. We didn't want to go out and publish a quote unquote airdrop guide, because then we'd have 10,000 people coming to farm an airdrop and then sell the token and never use the platform, right? That's kind of like, again, that's against our community. That doesn't make any sense. So if you want to just learn about a little bit about the philosophy on what we're doing there, make sure you come to our Discord. We'll publish the blog in there, and we'll probably also tweet on it. But yeah, Twitter, Discord, and you'll be all set. And feel free to DM us or message in any context. We're pretty good at replying.
Sweet, epic. We can wrap this up. I'm not sure if you'll want to or not, Steven, since you are here representing Metaplex. If you want to maybe do a little call to action for anyone looking to either join Genesis or launch a token with Metaplex Genesis, feel free. If not, all good. I know I'm putting you on the spot a little bit.
Yeah, no, it's great. I would say everyone who's on on the spaces, encourage them to check out the Collector Crypt launch this week. And if you're interested in learning more about the technology that's powering the launch, you can go to genesis.metaplex.com and read more about the on-chain infra that's going to allow the token to launch fully globally to anyone with an internet connection. Like, that's really the vision here, is that like we're working in crypto, chasing this vision of fully decentralized finance and commerce. So we should be launching our tokens on chain, and so I'm really excited to have a chance to debut the launch pool here with Collector Crypt. And for anyone who's interested in looking more under the hood, that would be the place to go. Or feel free to shoot me a DM as well. Happy to answer any questions that folks have.
Yeah, and I just want to jump in, Steven. Nice seeing you again. We had a good time in New York. Anybody who wants to hear our take on Metaplex, please DM me directly. I'm happy to share my experience with how that all went in a confidential way. And I'm very, very bullish. So you're not going to get any dirty secrets, but I'll be able to give you some more detail if you are a platform looking to launch a token.
I appreciate that. Yeah, no, it would have been funny if the next part was because they're terrible. So but it's been really fun working with you and the team on this as well, and it really does get me excited every time that we have one of these launches, like seeing the entire on-chain Solana community pull together. And so yeah, excited for this one. This is going to be a big one.
All right, guys, perfect spot to wrap it up. Thank you all for joining another, episode of the kitchen here with Marinade. Thank you to our partner Collector Crypt. Thank you to Metaplex for joining, and I will see you on the next one. Cheers, guys.
Thanks, y'all. Thanks, Nikki.
Thank you.